The town of Mercy, Arizona, had a theory about Sam Gideon. The consensus was that his heart had been turned to stone somewhere on the trail from Texas, or worse, left buried with a sweetheart back east. At 38, he was a fixture on the Bar K Ranch, their best roper and tracker, a man of few words and zero romantic entanglements. This made him a peculiar object of fascination. Women, intrigued by his quiet strength and the mystery that clung to him like trail dust, would try. The baker's daughter brought him pies. The schoolmarm engaged him in conversations about poetry. A determined widow from Tucson had even camped on the porch of the boarding house where he took his meals for a solid week. Sam turned them all down. Gently, politely, but with an iron finality that brooked no argument. His refusals weren't cruel, they were simply statements of fact, as immutable as the desert mountains. "I'm not the marrying kind," he'd say, or, "You deserve a man who'll give you more than silence." The reasons were a source of endless speculation. Some said he was a wanted man. Others whispered he preferred the company of his horse. The truth was simpler and heavier: Sam was tired. He was tired of loss, tired of the delicate architecture of expectation, tired of watching something beautiful get crushed by the hard realities of a frontier life. He'd seen it with his parents, with his sister. Love, in his experience, was just a prelude to grief. His solitary existence was not a prison, it was a carefully constructed fort. His refuge was a small, remote line cabin on the far western edge of the Bar K, nestled where the ranch land bumped up against the vast, rolling territory of the Bitterwater Apache. He preferred it out there. The silence was honest. The land didn't ask for promises it knew you couldn't keep. One afternoon, riding back from checking a dammed-up spring, he saw the smoke. It was a thin, gray column, too steady for a campfire, rising from the direction of a secluded valley he knew was sometimes used by small, family-based Apache bands moving between hunting grounds. A sense of unease prickled at his neck. It was the wrong time of year for a controlled burn. He found the source. A single wickiup, little more than a charred frame, smoldered in a clearing. The scene was one of recent violence. Scattered belongings, the body of a man lying near the creek, and the tracks of shod horses, white men's horses, leading away westward, towards the rougher canyons where outlaws sometimes hid. Movement caught his eye. From behind a stand of scrub oak, a figure emerged. It was a woman, Apache. She held a boy of maybe 5 or 6 years old against her leg, her other hand gripping a skinning knife. Her face was smudged with ash, her long hair loose and tangled, but her posture was straight, her eyes like flint as they locked onto Sam. He saw the grief, raw and immediate, but held in check by a will of terrifying strength. He slowly dismounted, showing his empty hands. "I mean no harm," he said, his voice low. He gestured toward the tracks. "They're gone. I can track them. Fetch the sheriff from Mercy." She didn't respond at first, just stared, assessing him with a desperation that had stripped away all social pretense. Her eyes flicked to his horse, his gear, his face. The boy whimpered, burying his face in her skirts. Finally, she spoke, her English clear but heavily accented. "The sheriff will come when the buzzards are fat. He will do nothing." She took a step forward, her gaze not pleading, but calculating. "You have a cabin, north of the Red Bluff. I have seen it." Sam was taken aback. She had been watching him. Of course she had, this was her land long before it was his ranch's boundary. He nodded. "My son and I, we have nothing. The winter comes." She stated it plainly, a fact as bare as the burnt poles of her home. Then she asked a question, and it was like a spear thrown straight through the armor of his solitary life. "You turned down every woman in Mercy. So I ask you, white man, do you want a wife, or just shelter?" The air left Sam's lungs. It was the most direct, unromantic, and devastatingly practical proposal he had ever heard. It laid bare his own motivations and her dire need in one brutal, honest sentence. This wasn't about pies or poetry. This was about survival. She was offering a transaction, her labor, her presence, in exchange for the safety of his 4 walls for her child. She was calling his bluff on his entire reclusive existence. Did he truly want only shelter, as he'd told himself? Or was there, in his refusal of every fancy, perfumed offer, a deeper hunger for something real, something that wasn't about fragile sentiment but shared resilience? He looked at the smoldering home, at the man by the creek, at the knife in her strong hand, and at the small boy who was all she had left. His stone heart cracked, not with sentimentality, but with recognition. Here was a woman who understood the cost of things. Who asked for nothing but a chance to fight another day. Shelter, he said, his voice rough. The cabin's tight. There's a wood stove. A creek out back. He mounted his horse, then reached a hand down. It's a long walk. She sheathed her knife. She did not take his hand to ride behind him. Instead, she lifted her son up to him. Sam took the boy, surprised by the light weight, and settled him in front of the saddle. The woman, whose name he did not yet know, walked beside the horse, her head high, matching its pace, a widow leading her son to a fortress she had chosen not for its prince, but for its walls. Her name was Sansire, which meant, morning star, but she told Sam to call her Sarah. Her son was Koba, wild horse. The line cabin, which had felt spacious for one, became intimately small for three. Sam moved his bedroll to the lean-to, giving them the cot and the single room. It was an awkward, silent arrangement at first. Sarah moved through the space like a ghost, cleaning, mending, cooking simple meals from the supplies Sam brought from the ranch. She spoke only when necessary. Koba was silent for days, his big eyes watching Sam's every move. Sam continued his work, riding out at dawn. He'd return to find the cabin swept, his mended clothes folded, a pot of stew simmering. There was no chatter, no implied domestic bliss. It was a silent contract being fulfilled. He began leaving things for her, an extra axe by the woodpile, a bolt of calico from town, a small pouch of sugar. She would acknowledge them with a nod, nothing more. The change came slowly, forged in practicality. One evening, Sam was struggling to stitch a torn saddlebag, his big fingers clumsy with the needle. Without a word, Sarah took it from him, her hands flying with swift, precise movements, the stitches appearing small and even. He grunted his thanks. The next week, she pointed to a faint smudge on the northern horizon. Smoke. Not cook fire. Your cows may be nervous. He rode out and found a small brush fire started by lightning, stomping it out before it could spread to the spring pasture. He started asking her things. That plant you gathered, what's it for? For fever. The yellow flower for stomach pain. He'd nod, storing the information like a map. One afternoon, he came back early to find Koba outside, trying to lift a hatchet too big for him to chop kindling. Before Sam could intervene, Sarah was there. She didn't scold. She knelt, placed her hands over his, and guided him through the motion. Strong, she said, but let the tool do the work. Like the river shapes the stone. Sam watched, a strange tightness in his chest. He saw the gentle teacher beneath the widow's stern exterior. He began talking to Koba, not as a child, but as a small person. He showed him how to whistle on a blade of grass, how to track a jackrabbit by the scuff marks. The first time Koba laughed, a bright, sudden sound by the creek, Sarah, who was washing clothes, went very still. She didn't look up, but Sam saw the subtle easing of the tension in her shoulders. The turning point was the first snow. It came early and fierce, howling down from the mountains, trapping them together for 3 days. The world shrank to the glow of the stove and the sound of the wind. On the second night, with the fire crackling, Sarah spoke unprompted. She told him of her husband, Taza, a hunter who could read the wind. She spoke of the raid, not with weeping, but with a sharp, etched pain. They came for the horses. He stood to fight. He was my shelter. She looked directly at Sam, the firelight dancing in her dark eyes. Now I must be my own. And Koba's. Sam, who had shared nothing of his own past, found words rising in his throat. My father died of the cholera on the trail west. My mother, she just faded away after, like a plant without sun. My sister married a man with a mean temper and a fast fist. I left Texas because I was tired of building things just to watch them break. He poked the fire. Shelter's easier. It just has to stand. A shelter that stands alone cracks in the first big wind, Sarah said quietly. It needs other posts. A shared roof. He looked at her then, truly looked. He saw not a transaction, but a partner. Not a refugee, but a woman of immense fortitude who was slowly, carefully, letting down the drawbridge of her own heart. He saw the beauty in her not as the town might see it, but in the strength of her hands, the intelligence in her eyes, the fierce love that radiated from her like heat from a banked fire. When the snow melted, Sam rode into Mercy. The usual curious glances followed him. At the mercantile, the clerk, Mrs. Higgins, smirked. Heard you got yourself a live-in squaw, Gideon. Finally found one that don't talk back. Sam, who had always ignored such comments, felt a cold fury rise in him. He turned, his calm voice cutting through the store. Her name is Sarah. She's my wife. The word hung in the air, surprising him as much as anyone. But as he said it, he knew it wasn't a lie for their benefit. It was the truth, discovered in a snowbound cabin. He wasn't providing shelter out of charity. He was sharing it, because her posts were strengthening his walls, and her fire was warming his long cold house. The piece they built was deep but delicate, like the first ice on the creek. Then, the outside world shattered it. 3 men rode into the yard. Sam recognized the leader from wanted posters, Cleek Boggs, a rustler with a reputation for brutality. The other 2 were his shadows, rough and armed. They'd been pushed out of their usual haunts by a cavalry patrol and were looking for a place to lay low. Howdy, Boggs drawled, his eyes greedily taking in the well-kept cabin, the stack of firewood, the smoke from the chimney. We're just needing a spot to rest our horses for a spell. Be on our way by morning. Sam stood on the porch, his rifle cradled casually in his arms. Sarah was inside, he knew, with Koba. Water's in the creek back a ways. You can rest there. This is a family home. Boggs's smile was ugly. Family. Heard you just had a squaw and a half-breed pup. Don't look like much of a family to me. His eyes lingered on the door. Maybe we'll just come in and see for ourselves. You'll stay where you are, Sam said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. Every instinct, every hard lesson from his past, told him this was the moment things broke. But now, he had more to lose than just his own solitude. One of the other men, jittery, went for his gun. Sam's rifle was at his shoulder in a blink, the shot ringing out. The man's hat flew off, and he stumbled back, clutching a bleeding ear. Next one's between your eyes. Sam barked. Boggs, furious but wary of Sam's speed, spat. You'll regret this, Gideon. We'll be back when you're not home. That woman of yours will wish we'd just killed her. They rode off, threats hanging in the air like gunsmoke. Sam stood rigid, the reality crashing down. He could defend the cabin while he was in it. But he had to work. He couldn't be both the sentry and the provider. The old despair whispered, see. This is what happens. You build something, and violence comes to burn it down. He turned to find Sarah in the doorway. She had heard everything. Her face was pale, but her eyes were clear. They will come back, she said. I know. You cannot be here always. I know that, too. The weight of it felt unbearable. Sarah stepped onto the porch. She looked not at him, but at the distant red bluff, then at the surrounding hills, her land. You think like a white man, she said softly. You think of the one cabin to defend. I think like my people. We do not wait in one place for the wolf to find us. We move. We use the land. A plan began to form in her words. For the next 2 days, while Sam did his ranch work with a new, frantic urgency, Sarah and Koba worked around the cabin. They did not fortify it. They prepared to abandon it. On the 3rd day, Sam came home to find the cabin empty of all but essentials. Sarah stood with 2 packed horses. We go to the high caves. The ones near the spring with 2 pines. You know them. He did. They were nearly inaccessible, a secret place. We will stay there. You will stay here, but not in the cabin. You will make a bed in the old mine shaft, where you can see anyone who comes. You will come to us at night, by the deer path, leaving no trail. We will be the shadow they cannot catch. It was a strategy of mobility and misdirection. It used the land as an ally. Sam, who had always thought in terms of standing his ground, felt a surge of hope. What about the ranch? My job. Tell your boss there is trouble with wolves. You are hunting them. It is not a lie. They executed the plan. Sam lived at the cabin by day, leaving signs of habitation, but slept in the hidden mine. Each night, he would slip away, following a circuitous route to the high caves where Sarah had made a new, temporary shelter. It was a hard, anxious existence, but it was shared. They were a team, outsmarting the threat. A week later, Boggs and his men returned at dawn, expecting a sleepy, vulnerable household. They found an empty, eerily quiet cabin. Puzzled, they ransacked it, finding little of value. As they argued outside, a single shot cracked from the ridge above the mine shaft. It hit the dirt at Boggs's horse's feet, sending the animal rearing. Another shot splintered the porch post near the other man. To them, it seemed like they were surrounded by unseen riflemen. Spooked, convinced it was an ambush, they fled for good, back to the deeper, lawless canyons. The danger had passed. But when Sam and Sarah returned to the cabin, they did not simply resume their old life. They stood together in the yard, surrounded by the scattered debris of the raid. Sarah looked at the cabin, then at Sam. "This is a good shelter. But it is just a place." Sam understood. He took her hand, a calloused palm meeting a calloused palm. "The shelter isn't the walls," he said, the words feeling as natural as breath. "It's what's inside them. It's you. It's Koba. It's us." He had turned down every woman who offered him a fantasy of easy love. He had waited, without knowing he was waiting, for the one who offered him a partnership in survival. Sarah had asked him if he wanted a wife or just shelter. He finally had the answer. "Sansire," he said, using her true name for the first time. "Will you be my wife? Not for shelter. For the shared roof. For the other post in the wall." Tears, which she had not shed at her first husband's death or the loss of her home, welled in her eyes now. They were tears not of grief, but of a hard-won belonging. She reached up and touched his face, a gesture of profound ownership and tenderness. "Yes," she whispered, "I will be your wife. And you will be my shelter. And I will be yours." In the end, the cowboy who wanted only shelter had found a home. And the Apache widow, who asked for nothing but a chance to fight, had found a man who would stand with her, not as a protector from the world, but as a partner in building a new one, together.